you told me about the chickens that
Yeah,
ate a part of them,
yeah.
my heart squeezed. Because we just talk about the survival rate, and when they're gonna germ and how it influence that, and then you're gonna try to find in them which one are what you really go for. Well, if the chicken pass by, that's like the random murderer that just go and do a shoot by in the street, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I had this,
That's the chicken murderer.
I saw this shit. I'm like, I had four fucking seeds off this one small Starbucks clear cup. I did this cross. It came out great. It lasted a whole fucking year. And then like I planted these seeds. I had all my shit going. And then like, a bunch of stuff happened in my life. And I was just really looking forward to at least just looking at these plants because I'm like, all right. And then finally the frost is over. I put the plants outside and I forget to close the gate that day. And my chickens come by first day and go boop, 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 and fucking eat three of them. And I was just like, son of a bitch. Like,
Ah!
and it was just a male left too. So I'm like, I can kind of see it's got like, I'm like, okay, this has got cool traits and stuff, but I mean, I hope this thing grows well. And it ended up growing like super nice, really great open bud structure for the pollen sac. So I'm like, sweet, trying to give myself a positive spin. And then I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna put it on now? Because I was really just gonna put those on the other side of the property and create a bigger batch, you know? And then I was just like, well, and then all of a sudden I had this late bloomer and the male was starting to senesce. So I decided to put it on this picture. But going back to what I was saying is if you just if you keep on planting the crop from the year before outside, nature and animals are gonna help you. Like roly polies, dude, when you have that badass seedling and you're all stoked, and then you come back the next day and the head is gone because some fucking roly poly at nighttime came up and
Dude,
ate it.
I had a couple roller poly that I've just munched on some backup clone the last time, and they've not ate the whole thing, but I've found a technique to find them pretty good, and I found that it's worked pretty much. Well, it worked a couple times, so I would say it's maybe not a sure technique, but it seemed to work. They go at night, so just take your plant, put it in the dark, and open the light and go out. An hour, a couple hours after, and I had the roly poly just beside the plant, going toward the plant, being like, "Whoops, there's light."
Yeah, it's like clicking on pictures, man. But you
So I found the roly poly because the fucker was going on the side of the pot, between the pots and the medium, and going to bury himself there. So I wasn't seeing that it wasn't a crack; it was a roly poly. Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
exactly. That
man,
small piece.
the universe tells me what it wants, like, because I have intention, and then like I've been, I don't have dogs anymore because of the accident, but like my girl Sasha, I had all these intentions of just pollinating this one plant, and I was gonna do a couple of branches, so I twisty tied them, and I made sure to mark them, and I knew what pollen I put on them, and like the other part of the plant was kind of wetted down, so I knew, and then I see my fucking dog walking past this male plant, and then walking underneath this plant, this female, and I'm like, oh, really? That's what you wanted to do today is pollinate my lowers. Okay. I see what you're doing over there, girl. So after and then my son, he'd take clones out of the like I had the clone tray in a room where it was locked and he couldn't touch it and it was in a tent and the tent was zipped up. And then one day I was just moving my stuff, absent minded. Him and I were playing, and then all of a sudden he was super quiet. And I was like, where did he go? So I go into the room and he's all, eh? And I'm like, oh. Oh, okay. Well, that's that's cool. It's all right. Like it I didn't need to know what that was anyways, buddy. Let's go play. So like having things eat what you intended to do and other things of that nature. I'm just like, well, the ether didn't want me to fucking grow it. So that's why you just got to put out thousands of seeds and whatever survives the whole fucking season, those are the chargers, you know?
Yeah,
Yep.
one thing that I was like going for is, let's say on 100 that you're living and going through the season. I'm I'm thinking at a couple of them as being vigorous, but I'm doubting if they're gonna do something else. And then there's a couple of them that made me think at what I wanted the best from last year. Like last year, let's say I see, okay, there's that and that in it. There's a couple that I hope hold those traits. I keep
Yeah.
seeds of those, but I may only grow one of those females for next year and hope for the best for that patch and grow another female and another patch. So you never know. Each patch is different. So uh, I was going back at one patch and being, holy shit, I don't have any male there. Like there was a couple really nice female, no no male around. So go back to the other patch. And well, the male diet for whatever reason, you're like, oh shit, I planted all the seeds of my favorite and now they are gone and I've not had any clone surviving from those I took. It's not because I've not tried. I took some clone and when I came back, by the time I came, the clone was starting to ferment in the Ziploc bag or whatever. There's always something that
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've learned from all that is that's why I told you about the mail earlier is if you have some nice mail from a variety that are strikingly different, you know what they are. And when you say the late bloomer with the pedigree of that thing where we talk about you have most probably a late trigger in flower because of the more tropical variety in it. So if you know you start to pollinate the late bloomer after everything else have shed its pollen and that one start to do his thing, you know that if you get a male at the same time, you're like, holy shit, yeah, that's those. I know it's those trait of the late bloomer of that variety that the male was in a couple years ago. So no,
Yeah.
that's why you start to do those math in your head like, okay, if the combination is right, I should be able to lean toward the population I remember from those late bloomer, but now it's a poly hybrid. I just know it's there.
Yeah, man. Like I basically want to get to a part of breeding where and like if I would have just pollinated my lowers this year, my chickens are so bold now that all the seeds are ripe. They knew exactly when the lowers are going to be ripe. Because if you walk around the circle part of my garden, all those plants have been attacked by my chickens. They jump as high as they can, they bring the branch down, and then they nibble on it and they almost tag team it. Because if you look at the branches, they're just fucking, dude. Like, so they've just mangled all of the plants on the lowers. So I'm just like, I'm just, I might just, when I'm actually taking my plants this year and I'm going to hang them upside down and dry them. If you saw like what I had ready, I got my 5x5 and my 12 by, so I got a 12 by 12 room that has my 5x5 tent in it. And for the last like 2 or 3 days, actually 3 days, I've been running my humidifier and the fans on just to see what the temperature swings are on my Bluetooth, and I'm going to see what it is without any mass in there, and then set the humidifier to where it should be. And then as I'm cutting the plants, I'm probably going to just start snipping the buds and then just letting them lay on the ground. And then during the whole entire winter, there's going to be that plant popping up again. And then when you're harvesting plants and they're all seeded up, like up the branch, there's those. seeds that mature the
Yeah.
fastest,
Yep.
and they usually fall out the quickest. So like I'm already going to have those seeds in the ground, plus I'm going to have the flower. And then I've noticed if I let my plants naturally senesce outside, they get spider mold. And it's almost like the nature's way of deconstructing the bud so that the seeds fall out. So
Yeah,
then,
as long that it's dry enough, the bud itself will kind of mold it a bit and fall from the branch.
mhm,
And that's exactly what, yeah, that normally, like what I've seen from more wide variety, and even some tropical variety, they still have that trait more, is that if you shake the plant, it's all the seed shell from, they all get the fuck out of there, and it's really annoying. I had even some autoflower that were like that, uh, I've cut the plant, and I think there was a third of the seeds that came on the ground. I was like, "What the fuck, man?"
yeah,
Just because like the stem is really dense at the end, like really snappy. So just when the cutter went snap, I've heard like,
yeah,
"Damn it, man! I don't play
I
Maracas. I
fucking,
just try to harvest."
I fucking had the seeds and they were all like an open cup, you know?
Yeah,
Everything's fine. I got the plant. I'm carrying it inside. I turn it upside down to put it on a hanger and I hear, and I'm like, that was probably like 200 fucking seeds. What the fuck? You know?
like 1,000 seeds that just dropped there. And you're like, that, that's why,
Yeah,
like, one of my friend was like, why the fuck you had as many Pakistani seeds for 2 years restarting there? I'm like, well, you know that Pakistani is kind of, there was some wild in it, like really tough wild plant. So there's no way I can stop it from being like that fucking shelling seeds everywhere. And I did nothing like you, and they just restart, and some of them did their whole cycle without me being there. Because I went there at fall to see if there was something from it, and there was still some plant there that year too, and the year after. But after that, they all died. So I found it really funny that they still survived 2 years without me planting anything. I just went there, chop the big tubs, and come back home with them to make some dry sieves because there was really absolutely nothing else to do with it. Like
yeah,
they were so seeded, like you could not believe how much the plant still grew after and still kind of managed to make some seeds. And I don't know if the male was still alive or not, but I remember that those fucker female, as soon that they finish their cycle and they've been pollinated on top of it, they just re-veg.
yeah.
They don't give a damn about the season itself. They were re-vegging in October. It was like, guys, you're gonna die.
Bro, I really love volunteers. And I mean, I've seen it like 4 years in a row now of where I've walked the plants sort of in a pathway. Like every place that I've been, and I have a big plant and I'm trying to like carry it inside or whatever. So you do that 10, 20 times, you know, all the plants that you're harvesting. And then the next year you come back and that pathway has like plants growing out of nowhere. So like in your backyard, there'll be a full garden. And then all of a sudden you'll have like
You have mail popping out everywhere in your fucking
one plant
backyard.
here, one plant over there. And you're like, son of a bitch. That's the way I walked. Like, wow. So I mean, like people that have maybe a 10 pack, they they put all their seeds in a glass and then they do their selection process and then they do their breeding with intent and they have their male and their female plant together and they did it all because they checked all their boxes and they have their way of breeding. I think that's
Wait,
beautiful.
wait, wait. You need to say they use a tiny paintbrush for all of it with the pollen collected in a small
It's a
tent with
beautiful. I
like,
see
dude,
this guy
And they
outside.
put
He's
on
got
some
a paintbrush.
it's okay too. I'm not
No,
disgracing
no, no,
anything of it, but we
no, check it
explain
out.
a totally
Hey, don't
other.
forget the seductive music in the background when you have the paintbrush, all right? You got to have that. Like, it doesn't work unless you have, like, yeah, some Barry Manilow or something going in the background.
And do you have your afro, or if you wear some dreads?
I was just saying, but homeboy, okay, so like, but then he had like this big partition, and it on the partition he had a blanket. So he had basically like what are those arches that you use for a wedding? You know, they have like all the decorations on them and shit, right? So he had like an arch, and then on the arch he had a blanket, and he's there with his females paintbrushing with intent. But I'm thinking to myself, the size of pollen, the direction of the wind, it's going to come through the tunnel, and then a millisecond later there's going to be a left breeze or a right breeze. So was this individual with a paintbrush thinking that because he put a, a white sheet up, he was going to stop the pollen from going to the plant that was 4 feet next to him? So then when he came out with another jar with another plant's pollen, there wasn't going to be any pollen from that other plant. And I was
Oh,
just like,
yeah,
is
yeah.
this the intention of some individuals to think that pollen isn't so small that you can't see it until it's 3 and 4 weeks later? Like, I mean, the only way you would know is if you pollinated a plant with your one plant pollen with the blankets up and then waited 3 weeks to see if the plant 4 feet next to it has any seeds starting on it. Or like, I guess you could hose down all your other plants first and then pollinate your plant with a paintbrush, but I don't know. I mean, I was just like, what's the blanket for? But have you guys, I just like growing male and female plants together, and whoever fucks
You,
fucks.
you know,
I
I'll tell you a
well,
technique that really easy we did. Okay, is you
Hold on,
take a small clone, you light
less
them on your balcony. Okay, and the male is on your balcony or in a box with kind of a plexiglass or just a translucent plastic on the top of the box and maybe on one side. But the plant is basically encapsulated in that. So you don't open that shit. You water it, and before like it wanna open its pollen sac, whatever, you water it and you wait till the pollen is ready there. And you do it on your balcony if you have a balcony or whatever. And then you put your small plant that you've lighted up in the box. You let them do their things. Like you can just put it there and shake the mail and you're done, right? You put it out after, and an hour after, you can just let it an hour or two. I was letting it an hour or two, and it was still working. I was taking the garden hose, sh- make it a big shower on it, and after that, I can take the small clone and put it indoor, no problem. And my thing, I knew I had nothing else on it. And it wasn't fucking up my indoor grow because the male, the only time he was dangerous, I've encapsulate in the box, water a big pot, and let it do its thing there. And I even let it die, it's like in the box. If I've used the female with fuck man, I let it die after. That's for sure. But I don't know if you ever did that kind of thing. But if you plant seeds right outdoor, one way that I've found my way to be more successful to have more seeds, I'll give you a small tricks is when you identify your best few male, chop them back at 5 node. They will flower about 10 to 15 days later. So you gain yourself a lot more room to get the bigger pollination for your female and still have to be able to get some view at least because some strains they just don't grow once you've pollinate. They don't do a lot on top of it, but some other strains do. So if you at least want to gain a bit more pollination on it, that work. Do I have a new one here? Yeah, we have Jesse
together.
and Bean, Knee, Supreme Grape, you, me,
Yes, sir.
you. Yeah, so
Dude, going outdoor
we
and
don't
pop.
have Coot around, so there's not as many
No,
people that can jump in.
I think I think growing, if you really want to have like breeding where you're selecting it, then you have to know your seed stock, and then you're
mm,
you're
been
basically
working it for a while. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
popping everything outside, because when plants pop in a pot outdoors, it's fucking phenomenal. And then you bring it inside and you mimic the exact time of the light structure inside. And I found my 500-watt LED and my 315 seem to manage it if I put it in the center of both, if that makes sense. So like the hot points of both, they're fusing together and creating a nice spectrum. And then I watch everything outside, and I watch the really cool males, and I see which one has the flower structure, the pollen structure that I want. And then I will bring that female when she has a good set of hair outside very carefully on a non windy day. And I will put it right next to that male. And I will shake the ever living piss out of that male onto that female. And I know at least a bunch of those seeds are going to be that guy. And then I'm not trying to control it 100% to only be that one male, but I know a majority of my seeds in the first set of seeds is going to be from the one I wanted it to be. And then I can work the line eventually and see what the progeny gives me. So I've done that, and then I've also, if I see that the structure on the male and the, like I did something from Katsu, his evil bastard. It was sour diesel, um, or it was a Durban. Yeah, so it was his Durban poison times sour diesel. So I put a male and a female in a tent. It was a 2x4, and I just let them grow together. And then I put them in the same pot, and then I zipped that tent up, and it was when nothing else was blooming as a male. So then I intentionally just made, you know, F2s. So I mean, I know how you can segregate plants and do that, but it just didn't. It was so. It just felt weird. Like it just didn't feel like what I need to do in my breeding projects. Except for I, I really did want to see if I could do it and actually have self control the whole entire time. And check this shit out.
Yeah, well, like I told you before, I just think it's important to do that before you do your gangbang party. So at least you know where to refer back to that. No, it's okay to do a gangbang. It just that Cartman was still searching who is dad, man. So it's just
I was
who's your
thinking, I
daddy?
was, but and then check this shit out, dude. So I had these seeds. I had a bunch of them because I knew exactly who the plant was. I had them on my desk, and I was gonna like label a bag, and I had them in a container, but the container was open, and this fucking mouse came up
Oh
the
man,
and ate
mouse have eat more
all
plant
of
that I
it, dude.
was thinking at. I've give some
On the
really
fucking
special seeds to a friend at one point, and he was growing his plant at his grandmother's house. She was like a really alcoholic woman, like really crazy alcoholic, and she did not care it that he grows some plant. So he was like, "Well, I will go," because he was renting a room at her house, and she was like, "Oh, I don't care that you grow a couple plants, just don't fill the room." So he put a 400 in the corner, start 25 seats to get a couple nice female from it, and the next thing we know, there was three plants surviving after the mice. Like every night, she was eating another one, and maybe munching on one and eating completely the other. And he came back to me say, "You have more of those seeds?" I'm like, "No, I gave you all I had." was like, oh fuck, man. It was two plants surviving, two, three plant maybe of it. I don't know what have happened, but after that, I don't remember keeping track of it. But I was finding it funny that the mice were just finding they were really good plant too. They
Yeah,
were
man.
tasting really good.
Just that's my story where it's just like when I put intention on it, it's either and I still have a limited batch of those seeds, which I'm just like, okay, so the world, the ether, the universe, the equinox, whatever you want to call it, is telling me these are the seeds that you're gonna select from. All those other seeds weren't seeds that you needed. We're making it easier on you. You had maybe 1,000 seeds and now you have maybe 30 seeds. You're welcome. So when I pop those seeds and I run that line, I'm not going to have to pop so many seeds now. So it's
Well,
just,
what I found really a bit annoying for my part is when I got old line that I realized years after that nobody still have it pure or in its form that we can rely on it and it was good. The only thing I got it's crossed with something else. It's a F2. You need to dig into a lot of them and hope that you get the nice smell with it. But I know it's there. I really know because I started with that. Like you
yeah,
know, for you, like oh, the late bloomer, there are probably more of that type of thing in it, and it's got other trait intermix in it. But all I want is still have those late bloomer, have some early, have some that survive and have good quality to them. Just they, I was doing the same. I was just digging my nose into a money plant and admiring how nice they are. Not necessarily nice for what you would consider the best plant to grow, but they were nice because they were there and they were mine.
yeah, I think out of the thousands of plants that I've grown, my brain and my nose has become accustomed to like walking past a plant and you knock into it, and then all of a sudden your brain's like, hey, fucker, did you smell that? And you're like, nah. And you keep on walking through your garden, everything's going fine. And then you bump into the plant again, and it's like, hey, grab that plant and smell it. And then you do that, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Like, whoa, this is amazing. So,
No,
like,
but
in that
I
time,
know.
if you don't tag it, then eventually the way that I've been growing now, some of those smells gas off and then the flower over ripens and you're back to square one again because
Oh,
there's
but
like,
that's exactly why when I saw how you had that many bugs with those bud in it. That's what we were talking last week. You have those really old stuff, you crush it, and it still convinces you that it's fucking nice in it after a year or two of letting it just it being dry completely, never cure or whatever. When the Pakistani do their ash, they cut the plant pretty late and cut it, bunch it in the field and let it there. You don't have all the gassy strain that will survive it. And well, they have some really gassy stuff in it, but you no longer smell it for most in the dry sift, because by the time they do their dry sifts, they've crushed it, they've let it dry super long, and all that things. You know, you don't have the same volatile terpene that are preserved for some stuff that people like to smoke now. So I was thinking, if you want to select for fresh frozen you really don't have the same kind of thing that if you go for dry sift. And one of the old line I was talking of, man, when I do a dry sift with it, it's pretty crap in general. But back then we had some good one in the strain. It was just not famous for that. So I've not been able to, let's say, preserve enough of that in the line, or maybe I need to dig again. I don't know. But what I found out is that if I was doing fresh frozen, I was capturing exactly why I was liking that strain. When I go smell the plant fresh, or when I just cut it and it's super loud smell and it's kind of grassy at the same time, it's not as good. But when I go in the wood that it's start to flower and going later to have that buildup of different flavor, if I make fresh frozen, I have all that complexity that I can taste in it, which I cannot get in the flower itself. I will only experience it if I've been beside the plant. And that's exactly what I was liking about that plant. It's not that much defect or this or that. It's like that thing smelled like when I was a teen, I was going in the wood to go see the plant. That's the only thing I wanted to keep from that. And it worked. I give some of those seeds to a guy, and he told I said nothing about the smell, whatever. I just told him what strain it is, and that you won't have the best necessarily in most of the plant yet. You need to maybe make a generation or two for of your favorite. You should get back there, and the only generation he's been able to do because he had to move after, but he was like. Dude, the plant fresh was so nice, man. It was smelling like when I go in the wood, like moss and coniferous and that kind of sugary of the Christmas tree. And it was like,
Oh,
holy crap, man. But nobody in more south will have the same memory of going in the wood when it's really hot and humid and you get around the Christmas tree and the spruce tree and that smell of the 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 trees, but also the earth that it's kind of a mossy around, and you know, y- you have some Afghani that may smell mossy, but they have more of a earth smell to it. Those have more of a coniferous smell to it, not necessarily pine, just more spruce tree and Christmas tree and stuff like that. So I found it interesting to for that, but I know there's some people that have really good hybrid and really good per line of that thing. It's just they don't have the line that we had back then. So I'd rather have some booth to sort through because it get that nostalgic link to it, but it's the exact same strain. So I'm kind of urged to get it back at one point or being sure that someone I know buy it at those places where before we no longer be able to get it. But once I see it again, I mean, when you touch your goal, sometimes you're like, what's next? So I'm like, maybe I will have to keep it as a memory and just leave it there instead of just trying to go back at that thing back then. When people you heard about the strain of the 70s and stuff like that. Well, also what I've heard from the 80s at least, there was a lot of strain that were growing well, but not necessarily the best to smoke. They had some really interesting flavor and really good growth, but the best to smoke was not the majority of them. So when I heard some breeder of the West Coast saying, I don't really have a lot of nostalgia for the older strain, that's because they've smoked so much of it that they were like, dude, we could get better. So there is also that played in my mind that when you think it's really the best now, okay, I would make some effort to go forward with that. But if I think it's just good, not special and the best growing for and adapted for my place and I find it quality, I will no longer put as much effort into it unless it's really hard to obtain. Like that's the thing. Back then we had a lot more trouble to source good shit that grow well outdoor and once you were giving it to everyone around you. Maybe after 2 3 years trying to cash on that thing first, but you want to get it back. If you want to get it back, you have to share.
yeah. I think I've learned a few habits and I want to see if it comes true. And I need to learn how to do fresh frozen and do hash press and all that stuff. Next year, I'm going to try
If
to.
you got seeded weed, I don't think that fresh frozen will be your best solution, but it still work. I did some fresh frozen, dump it in the compost, and I had 1,000 plant growing from it. I was like, holy shit, that wasn't the goal. I did not even wanted those seedling.
Well, like, I mean, like making hash, not dry sift, but when a plant smells a particular way, if I had a Sensi plant and like it smells amazing at that time, it's almost like telling you to chop it then and there. Like I had some plants that
For fresh frozen, if yeah, I kind of know what you mean. Like, you need to wait till your trichomes have a good structure, but you can go pretty early.
but I mean like it's telling like okay, so like when you take a plant out of the pot and you can smell the roots and the roots are smelling fucking rude boy. Like you're like, fuck, dude, that shit smells all
I know,
Kimmy.
man. I've smelled some plant that would. I remember like transplanting in the root were like having that kind of a mossy and I don't know
Yeah,
that there was really a smell to the roots. Yeah, I
yeah.
know what you mean.
So like, and you're like, okay, and it's in veg, right? And you're like, fuck,
Yeah, yeah.
root smell. So then you're like, this is gonna be a bad boy. And then like it goes and you're like, damn, okay, cool, it's a girl. Right on. And then it smells really good. And then you wait for the maturity of the plant, and that smell kind of fades away. And it smells good and it's a great effect, but I
Yeah,
feel like
because the
some
plant is no longer like breathing as much and being at the top of his health. I know what you mean. Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
it.
but like at the peak of the smell, I kind of want to do a tester run next year and just be like, oh, you're telling me that you want to be cut now. Okay. And then
You're allowed now. Yeah.
throw it in the freezer, wait a week, and then fucking, do a
But
wash, make the
why not
hash.
just cutting the tops of the plant, like the nicest top, and let all the rest grow there, and you're gonna see like what really the plant at the end, and maybe do dry sift, and you'll be able to
Yeah.
get two completely different produce from it.
And then you can see the effect on like maybe you cut it 3 times, right? Like you when it
Yeah,
smelled,
yeah.
you fucking cut the top off, and you're like, "Ooh, this cola is mine." You cure
But
it
the old
properly.
Canadian classic we had, a lot of them were good to crop in 2, 3 times.
Yeah, no,
Just because when the top were starting to be really dense, you wanted to chop them just before they get mature, and they were really pretty. But when you let it a tiny bit more late, the lower were gaining some weight, man. In 10 days, they were going way more fat and swollen, and everything was nice. But if we had keep the tops, we would have had maybe mold in the inside of some of those tops. And my
yeah,
friend was starting to top his plant because of it, and he had to tie all the branches together really strongly to be sure that they don't split. And I was like, well, that's stupid. I will just bend the plant, bend it
yeah,
to see how I can adjust it so that most of the bud are smaller, but I've discovered, well, a long time ago, I did some bonsai stuff for a while, and the things that you need to manage is do not limit your vigor and your growth of the apical few branch that you want. As soon you do that, I don't say you have really smaller yield, but you won't get the same vigor on your plant. You kind of fucked up your plant in this oxygen distribution and he's kind of trying to feed everywhere quite equally, but you will never get that really nice crown of few tops. And you can manage it to have a smaller tops, more equal most of them, and not going extreme and so it's just a way of going with your plant. It depends on each variety. But I remember the across of Durban we had. If I was letting it go from the start upright, I only had a really nice top and 5 tops on the side. That's it. If I was letting it branch out by putting the plant on the side, maybe you know manipulating the stem a bit to let it branch more and not even top it. Maybe bend it for a while till a couple branch come out, and then let it go back upward. And it was going back pretty much upward with just a tiny curve into them by the time they start to really flower. But I've noticed that I was able to bend them till 10 days in flowering. And after 10 days in flowering, if I was going wrong, I was seeing it right because I had more distribution of vigor instead of having few good nice top. The only thing I wanted is have better overall growth, but not fucked up my crown for that. Have just a smaller long top, you know, like the side branch were going nice, but if I had a really bushy indica and I was doing that, the top was kind of shading part of the nice crown. So I started to learn on how to manipulate that technique and not doing too much of it. Because if you really want to scrog your plant, sometimes you need to top it from the start. And I was finding it more convenient from clone to top it more early and have like 4 or 5 tops plant on it. Because some variety, they still look like a plant. Each of those branch, even if you've bent them or whatever, they still have pretty much the shape of the plant. They just have a couple more branch at the lower, but most of the shit that you do early in veg for some plant that are more apical, they just do nothing good. Most of those branch do nothing. So I started to modify a tiny bit how I was doing it, still doing it, but like, okay, it worked better from clone. It worked better if I don't go too much on some variety. Like some indica, you top it 4 times and then train it on the side, and they will always do pretty much the same nug size everywhere and pretty much every time. And there's some strain that those things work so good that it make you think there's a set technique and you know that you have to do it exactly that way, but you cannot really do it only one way. Those plants have so many way to grow that you need to learn a bit like to manage it to really know if it's gonna work. But I found outdoor getting beat by the element and removing the branch that doesn't get vigorous as soon as I see them, that was my better bet. I wasn't like trying to top them too much, mostly from seeds. I don't like to top plant from seeds because sometimes they just don't have enough time to recover from that, or they just have a group pattern that you don't know exactly if you're gonna choose that one, or you've just top it too early, or what happened in it. So I found it, man, funny that a lot of people now grow a lot of those OG hybrid and this and that, and they have all a kind of a similar type of grow. Not all of them, but a lot of people like have used the same technique on all those things, and it works because they have the same type of structure of the plant. Yeah. So they just get a bit like stuck into their technique, thinking it's the only way to grow those plants. Well, grow another type of plant, you will have to change of technique. Maybe that's why I think.
Yeah, a lot of these plants, the the chickens did it, and then a lot of the plants, I went around and I would finger roll the stems. So like I just go around and I kind of just basically like aggressively rolling on the tippy tops. And then I was like, man, I'm gonna top these. And I'm like, wait, I don't even know what the fuck they're gonna grow like. So I'm just gonna roll the tops. And then as they went into like, a couple months for my the stems, maybe like 6 or 7 nodes down. And then some of these plants, they just budded up like a motherfucker. And I'm like, I'm so glad I did not top any of these because like each branch was like a brand new fucking plant cola, like the picture you can see,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it's like
But that type of
all
plant is a bit
colas
more
were.
like the Durban or the A's do that a bit more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't really manipulate this plant right here. I
I,
didn't really
I
do
really
it.
like
But
I
that
really
one just
like it look a tiny bit like the all the timer purple in it with something way more indica stuck into that make it look way better. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
more chunky and stuff like that. For everyone will be like, "Oh, yeah, really, I rather get that than the old timer A's that you have a lot of more tropical and trait into it, more Colombian. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and
But anyway, it's I like the the pedigree on that one. I'm like, I think it's that one that you were saying you had some buck ash plant of
yeah, it
cicada in
was
it.
rainbow haze times purple tie haze times red Lebanese times purple tie haze times uh Panama red times puck back cross.
So
So just like, damn,
I'm
it's got
just telling you, there's some of those strain that will just combine most of their trait with some other that you just name in it, because some of those have been line bred for so long that you see whatever. Man, you've crossed it in something and you see it even if you've crossed it with 20 of the things after, you still see trait of that. It's crazy because it's like in the earlier parents of it and it's more dominant for those things. Even if the strain is heterozygous by itself, it still pass a set of trait from it that are dominant gene. That's amazing. That's when I started to learn about all those things because I was trying to explain when I was younger some stuff that people that went to school about that are just you're talking about, man. It's called this and that, and that's what happened. No, you got it wrong on that thing, but it still do what you say. You know? So they clear out the smoke for you. I
yeah.
like, man, to listen to those really deeply educated breeders that are not like I'm the next breeder on the cannabis cup, whatever. No, no, those guys are the guy that some of them are choosing the cultivar that go on the market and you don't even know about them, and they do that for the last 20 years. They are really highly educated about that, and that's why they get hired by everyone now. You know, so I found it quite interesting to see some of those guys were guys like you that do their shit in their backyard and then start to work with a nice guy that needed them to do this and that, and you organize yourself to be more professional in it and go to
Oh
school
yeah,
and pay your
definitely.
school with your first few, you know.
Yeah, and that's why I asked Peter. I was like, because I was buying, I don't know, I was dropping maybe, well, I won't even say how much because it just sounds braggy. But anyways, I would see his website and I'd buy 10 or 20 different packs of
You
seeds.
made me jealous for what you show. Yes. Yeah, I don't
And
have that money. I am glad that you've been able to do that, but when I see what you do with it, I'm like, holy fuck, and you afford to do that? Man, you
yeah,
got fun. Yes, I got it. But
well,
holy
yeah,
shit, just to get those back in my hand, I would have been really happy.
yeah. I mean, I don't have Wi-Fi. I don't
Yeah.
have internet. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't drink. I don't go to the dispensary. I don't go to I don't go to fucking restaurants. I
Yeah.
cook my own food for work. And it's amazing how much money you can save. And then you know, I just
Man,
fuck
that's exactly what you know. You just said that there. That I've made it sound like if it wasn't that, but I know you enough to. I know how you take it. So yeah, that's exactly what I mean. You went all in toward some goal that you had. You've been
yeah,
able to save for it, and that's what important about that. Because the only way I've been able to start my own my my bees and stuff like that. That's
yeah,
I was doing pretty much the same kind of thing. I was going to sleep at my work in my truck to try to save on gas.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that
I don't
money I was
follow.
spending it on some new equipment and stuff like that, and being able to get bigger. And at one point, I was like, well, at that point, what I have, I need to go more serious with it because I got enough to do it. But to keep flowing the money all the time, it's a way different thing. But when you do it for passion and it's not costing you anything to continue, that's a lot, man. That's like it afford you to continue by itself. It can run by itself and just feed itself, and just that it's already, I think, a good success when you can do that. Planting seeds outdoor and
That is
feeding a
on
bit your soil and all that. You already buy food for your chicken. You already got like, you know, you already got stuff that maintain itself over time after that, and you just go through the seeds and have fun. The light that you have, you will probably run out of their life, and you'll be like, do I really need to buy those things? Oh, maybe I just gonna buy a string of light from Home Depot to keep some plant in veg and use the sunlight most of the time. And one of my friends went all in for that. He's not in Canada, but he's in Europe, and he went with solar panel in the mountain and just have a couple light over a few plants. And in the winter, most of the time, what he do is he take a couple good clone of his crop and give it to one of his friend that have a greenhouse. And in the greenhouse, they have HPS for tomato and stuff like that and whatever. I don't remember what they grow in the winter in that greenhouse, but they have a couple tropical trees and just a small glass greenhouse on the side of the house. And what they started to do is bring the plant there and keep a small kind of a box on the side in the greenhouse that have some, like, to just let it under the light, but not at not past 12 hours, let's say that, so they light that part of it, and they can do a crop in the middle of the winter there to see what's it look like when it's not seeded, and they still able to keep some plant on the side and as a mother plant, in the same greenhouse, but they have a kind of a block. So in over the one of the bed, they have some just kind of a hoop house that they pull the tarp on. So I found it really convenient to do that. That way, if you can get a small hoop house in your greenhouse and light dip in it, but you just need to light dip for the end of like in spring, if I can say. So like it's last harvest that you do in the greenhouse, you need to finish it as light dip, which is funny because the plant when you do it in the greenhouse, it give him an idea of what is the unseeded plant. But the plant he have in the mountain, they are always full of seeds. And if learn to keep some clone of those that were not necessarily the best growing, because you don't know if it's just outside factor that made it. And that's what I've learned with it is that when you grow outside like you do, the most vigorous plant are not necessarily the cream of the crop. If you keep clone of everything, you may see it's taller and bigger, but it's not necessarily uh, bigger harvest and quality that go with it or whatever. So sometimes you're like, well, I'll keep that big giant one and that really good quality things for next year's. That's the two I select my seeds from now because I know that it can still be in there and intermix, and that's just kind of doing a bit of a selection in it. But being able to flower the plant in the greenhouse, the couple plant that you've chosen, was like for him a really good step forward because he re-veg some of the plant sometime when he cannot clone them, and he end up with a tiny bit less I would say, dwarf indica type, you don't have as much of them in it because they don't re-veg as well. It doesn't mean it's gonna always be like that, but for the seeds that he grow, uh, he say, well, they are well adapted for the place, but he don't have as much of those short, late season or really early stuff. You have kind of an in between that can re-veg. I don't know if it makes
I
sense
think
the way I explain.
I like I if I really truly love a plant and after all these years of doing it, um, I'll dig it up. I'll bring it inside. I'll bring the whole entire plant in and I'll re-veg the whole entire plant. And it'll take approximately 2 or 3 months for it to start re-vegging nicely.
Yeah.
And then
Really, when it start to
by
be in
that
it.
time, the season's almost here. And
Yeah.
then when it's good weather, I'll bring it back outside.
Yeah, like you get time to do clone from it and let them root
No
well and then
clone,
put back
no
everything
clone.
outdoor.
I mean, like some of them I have taken clones and they have rooted, so then I know it's also a really good plant that clones easily. So I try to do that. Um, but I'm starting to get into my like what's my labor driver? How much time am I spending with the plants, the chickens, my wife, and my life? And I'm just like, I'm pretty much gonna give up digging up the plants now, and I'm pretty much gonna give up making clones. And I'm like, okay, I have a few plants that I definitely want to bring back inside. Maybe I'll allow myself. And then all of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, I've got fucking 50 plants re-vegging this year. And I'm just like,
Yeah, you told me about that last spring. Yeah, I remember you told me about that last spring. I was like, dude, I'm not sure you're gonna do that, but yeah, you just told me, yeah, you still in it. Okay, there is that thing. It's kind of a disease. I know. You're ill. You have like the gold fever now. You're fucked, man. You're doomed forever.
I got fucking basically my son's because I named it JR's clone, and then things happen, so now it's John Roberts' clone, and I think I have 20 of those plants inside, and a couple of them already have spiderweb bud rot, and a couple of them are like super ripe and shit. And I'm like, if this decimates the whole re-veg grow, it's gonna be okay because I got seeds. And so now I got to organize those plants 1 through 25 and make sure that when I do collect the seeds, because I've already started, but then I'm going to have to restart. And those are just going to go into I call it nature's lint. Because if I lose communication to myself on properly bagging seeds and knowing exactly what plant it's from, I just take the baggie of that seed and I put it into another bag. And then I take all those bags and I throw it in with all the plant matter and all the leaves and all the stems. And I call it nature's lint. And then I call it, Mad Science Mix 2022, 2023, 2024. And then when I'm doing like all of my plants from all of my seasons, I'll take a little pinch out of each one of those nature lint bags and put it into another bag that it's a must grow mad science mix for the next year. So then like I've been doing that and like I have no fucking clue what year, what plant it is. And that
But
like
man,
that's
I've followed you since the start with that. I've seen what you start with it. And for anyone doubting of what I've went into that gang bang stuff from whatever chaotic stuff that we just try to go through, it's may sound chaotic, but when you start with gold, you're gonna be able to sift the gold back in from it because you still have the whole thing there that's intermixed whatever how, but the only thing that you need to focus on at one point is it still good to keep around, because when it grow well it's one thing, it's just one thing. You have all of, well, three-quarter of it, but now you need the quality that make it that you want to grow it really. What's the quality from it now? You can identify it after or try to keep track of it. It's whatever how you want, because the population still contain that. I told you about some of the dominants that nature go, and it doesn't mean that it's a nature that you want to keep from it, from
Oh yeah.
those breed. But it's a whole other thing. It's gonna happen anyway. If your strain have to be into trash, it gonna go into trash at one point, whatever you do, unless you keep clone of the best one and stop it there,
Yeah.
because you don't know if you have like bad gene that make it into like, and you've just been lucky to have really good generation two three time, and then it just go into waste. It seemed like, but I've seen people telling me that, and they've crossed it with something else that they were liking, and they still found a lot of influence of the good trait they were losing from their stuff when they say, dude, it start to go to trash, and I've crossed those mail with the nice clone of boy to my friend that was growing well in his patch last year, whatever, and he's been able to kind of preserve some of those traits, a bit like what people say about the A's. A lot of the A's, if you grow it by itself, you need to really sift into that, and that's why that make it more valuable as a good mother from some of those plants, because they are just so heterozygous that it's hard to maintain exactly what you want from it from generation to generation. You can improve, but really slowly, and the room to improve is kind of hard. And there's a way to do it, but it's really you need to be a couple guy on the same project and interchange the really best of it, and being able to lock on some trait that you would not be able yourself. And it's really another breed to start with the heterozygous stuff, but at the same time, each of those breeds, like I told you, that been line bred for a while, and you integrate them together, you have some influence that is there. So you already work with something solid that's
Yeah.
just you
I
don't
think
know how it distribute now.
I think the iterations that I have are really like mold resistant and pest resistant because of I mean I dude I looked at how many pictures I have on my Instagram. I have fucking 10,000 photos. And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking how long it takes me to post one photo sometimes. And I'm like, okay, maybe it takes me about a minute. And I'm like, okay, so I have all these pictures from start to finish of how I started. And I have videos of me just with plants that have wing it aphids on them. And then I have trays full of mold. And I'm growing the clones in mold and they're still rooting. So then I'm taking those plant cuts, I'm putting them in a pot, I'm growing out those cuts, I'm pollinating those, and I'm folding in, exotic genetics and stuff from Peter and stuff from Dutch and stuff from other people like Adam Dunn. And as I'm folding things in, some of those breeders have cuts, and automatically I see like mine doing okay. And I won't say who or how or why, but some of them instantly get PM. And instead of culling those from the group, I allow those plants to have PM and I'll just rip off the leaves. I'll spray them in the shower and then they go outside and they're kind of weak sauce. And then all of a sudden, I'll put them outside next to a couple of males, and as they're flowering, they'll get seeded up, and then the next year, those plants won't mold up,
Yeah,
and
because you
like
get more resistance from some of your
yeah,
population that get
yeah.
integrate. Yeah, yeah. I
So
don't
it's
know how much it get into fixing itself like that, but I know it do it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
because
that's one of the thing I really find it annoying with the new strain. It's like people don't have all those notes about how it react in some other climate, and they tell you, "Oh man, it's fucking nice. No, 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 no. It's like this. It's like that." And you grow it in another climate, and it's like dude, your plant look like shit beside the breed that are not supposed to be as good than that. So I'm just telling you, I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep it around. And then the next thing you remember is that, holy shit, I had a male of it that I've not seen of his breed, and you've crossed it with your shit, and you grew it next year, and it's the best thing in your garden. And it's like,
Yeah,
whoa, okay, it's
conservative.
where I'm going now.
I mean, like all people deserve a shot, and I appreciate the fact that everybody has a different way of doing it, and my way isn't the right way for maybe 99% of the populace. But I feel like just because a plant is tiny and it's the size of a thimble, if it's got three fucking seeds in it, I'm popping them fucking seeds because I have no idea what the alleles are going to express in the
Yeah.
hidden genetics until
I
I
would
actually.
say I'm more happy to see male from some of those really like I could just get 3, 4 seeds. I really have some male because it gives me the ancestral memory, let's say, of it more. Because the female, it's like what the female is, that it transmit more than what it was. Like there's and the male, I found that it's more like you're gonna find back and front from your older breed from it. It's not always like that,
Yeah,
but I find it a bit more true than the opposite.
like the mom is the structure of the flower. Like when
Yeah,
you have your
yeah,
mom
yeah,
plant
yeah.
together,
Also, that's true.
your mom basically, if it's a like bordello is a well-bred plant, right? So like I can see the bordello come into the flower into the next generation. And like I saw that when we were doing plants at work, some of them had Hermie traits, like fucking cookies and cream or Gorilla Glue or wedding cake. If they got stressed out, they would throw some nanners and it wasn't like hermaphroditic flower. It was more just nanners on the
A
bottom.
couple nano, yeah.
But when you grew out those seeds, because we would grow them out to do like test pops and shit, you would you would see the plant structure and you'd be like, oh, it's a fucking wedding cake. Or oh, that's an ecto cooler. Or fuck, that's kind of cool. So like even though the mom hermed out, the mom was passing the trait of her flower structure. And it was
Yeah, so when
like you could
people talk about stable genetic, they've not seen it cross with something strikingly different and see exactly what you talk about. You know what I mean? Like when you just see your own set of seed, you don't necessarily see how dominant it is for what it is really, because you still see a variant of the a couple trait, whatever, and you don't realize how the whole breed is so dominant for what it is. It's fucking crazy, man. People when they back cross 20 fucking time and cross it to their cousin that they back cross again, and dude, those things just look like what they're supposed to when you cross it back with anything else after that. It just reappear pretty closely, like you said, the flower looked like that. Influence of something, but it looked like that.
I just
What
thought it
you're
was funny
most
that the dude at work, that the owner's son, he would be happy about that because he was like, he wasn't, dude, he was one of those guys that like talk out of both sides of his mouth and he didn't really understand. And I told him that you could reverse a male. He's like, you can't reverse a male. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
you
okay,
don't
never mind.
use ethylene blocker. You add ethylene. I'm
Yeah.
just telling the
And
truth
he,
there.
he was, he was like, because we had this fucking killer cut. And I'm like, why don't we just reverse it and make pollen from that plant? And then we'll have seeds from that plant. And then we can select from those. And like when I talked to him about breeding or anything, instead he was using fucking sour diesel AJ cut pollen because it had like Hermie traits. And then he'd be using that pollen. And then he'd take that pollen and put it on another plant. And I'm like, bro, you're using a stressed pollen onto another plant that stresses. So now it has the dominant trait of stressing and throwing nanners. So then you're doing this in a grow with 320 plants and you're proud of yourself that you made a cross, but you're making a cross with stress pollen
Yeah, you
to
know, like the guy
stress
of
that
the
creates.
GG farm. The guy that did the cross of the GG4 did not wanted to start the seeds because of that. He the little he knew is that some of the plant were so really nice and whatever good of it. So yes, it's kind of if you do it once, okay. If you do it twice, shame on you, man. Shame on you. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
but I my hat's off to the guy because he was just burning through money, and it's just like, well, the crop is seeded. Take out as many seeds as you can find, but we're still selling that fucking flower.
And if you would
So,
have been and joined some of the forum and talk with some of the old school guy that have just 25 plants in their garden and they have like maybe a couple of the really old school stuff and some cross with the sour diesel and this and that because they like how it grow and they don't select for arm trade. They grow for quality overall and do that big work of sifting into population and see which one cross the best with which one. They do it super slowly to be exactly sure, like what we were talking earlier. Like some people go really strategically because they want to hold some clone that they will be able to put in production and have the best out of it. And why they do that is because back then it was the only way get your best. So
yeah,
if you
the
see
best.
something really good passing around, you test it. You don't adopt it right away and do your own thing. You may start play with the male and skip a couple of female and see how it go and maybe some of the line you did are really going well and you got a couple of good clone of it. You have the seeds of the best grass. You have even the less good one and you start some of each of those possibility to be able to really know what I got in it. And people were going sometimes really slowly in their advance, but what they were keeping was so fucking better than anything that people claim. Oh, I got Northern Light. Man, I had a lot of Northern Light stuff that I wasn't keeping. But the best Northern Light I've smoked and I've seen, yeah, I understand why people like Northern Light. It's just that to me, playing with all those strains that have been built with Northern Light, I would rather go with them now than go back to Northern Light because it wasn't my favorite to start with. I don't say it's bad. A bit like what was the other fucking shit? Like the Durban. I've liked it to smoke Durban. I don't like to grow it. Like the Durban with the pink hair and the really early stuff. I like it that. It's a nice effect. But for most of the time, most of the plant were not something you can smoke every day all day long. We were like me and one of my friends meeting each other once in a while, maybe once or twice a week max, and we had a clone that is pretty close to in the pedigree than the Jackaroo. It was, if I can say, another type of phenotype of Jackaroo. If I can say, it was called Buddha by a Dutch passion, and we had the Durban that was a Durban skunk cross, in fact, and we're finding it really good effect for most of them. Like those two strain that were like, holy shit, man, that's more. You can smoke one after the other and get really higher and higher, like to a point where you wonder how much you've been able, like how you've been able to smoke that much and be that high that night. I mean, some of the more indica stuff, you're just fucked up after a joint or two and you cannot smoke more of the night. You're just man, you're gonna sleep, man. Like some of those more indica, if the more you smoke, at one point it just doesn't mean anything. You're just blowing smoke. It doesn't get you higher. So that's why we're really enjoying those two strains because we're like, holy shit, that's really good. But after seeing both of them growing, I would say I would have grown that Buddha, but not outdoor. But the Durban skunk was growing outdoor. It was just kind of a Well, some of them were looking pretty skunk, if I can say, but it was looking like a nice, well-formed bud on a really tropical plant. It wasn't acting too tropical for what it looked like. Like the skunk in it and the line of Durban was making it kind of manageable a bit more, but it wasn't the really early pink hair Durban that my friend had and before. But his line, who have been open pollinate outdoor for so long, that most of them were completely like, I don't know if it was 10% THC, because most of them were really lower THC than what he started with. And when he was crossing it with anything else, it was passing some good trade, but there was always that low THC population in it. So I don't know if any other one had it from the old Durban, but he had the old Durban that was really early before it get crossed to a skunk that get it make it later. I don't know. Like I just know that Dutch Passion was the one that my friend had the Durban that we had, and he tried those from Census Seeds, and he was finding that both of them were pretty close to each other, but one was more looking a tiny bit more skunk and going more late than the other company had. I just remember seeing the one from Dutch Passion that he had because he bought some seeds from the first few times that they were selling feminized seeds. The Durban was one of them, on Dutch Passion, and he bought it back to see if he would like more. Like he was like, oh, it must be like their best clone. They've reversed it. Yeah, but 25% of the plant were armed. But it's the early time of the feminized seed, so he was just a bit bummed to see how much you've paid for plant that arm in a rate that is higher than the normal line of it, and that the normal line was having as much good plants from it at the end. If you look for your money, you were spending more to get as much nice plant from your seeds, so it's stupid. So he was like, man, we should have just made some seeds from it and grew it from seed instead of trying to keep a clone of it and just being a bit like you, like, fuck it, man, grow a bunch of seeds and let the lower get pollinate and, select a couple male, whatever. But I found it funny that how many people now would never fucking care to go into all that trouble because you can order weed and get it mail next few days. Even here, some city you have like the, the, f- the same day delivery. So
People with instant gratification, that's, that's fine. There's some people that want to drink Mountain Dew and play video games all night and go to the dispensary in the afternoon with their friends, and like they don't want to grow, and then there's some people that want to grow but they only want to grow from clone, and then there's some people that want to buy packs of seeds and they'll put them all in a glass of water and they'll do some selection, and they'll have like snuff videos when they kill all the males, and they'll
yeah,
have a bunch of friends that kind of like rally around the crowd, and are like, yeah, get that male out of there, dude, fuck the male. And I'm just like, ugh. But everybody has their own path. It's just I don't
yeah,
pollinate. I just grow plants together, and if I can grow them in the garden, there's so much fucking variety. And then whoever bangs who is great. And then, like, I did all that, and then I had the outliers, and I had that one that smelled like strawberry daiquiri, dude. It on the front, it smelled like strawberry, like fake strawberry out of a drink, like a strawberry liqueur. And then on the back end, it smelled like rum. And I kept on letting it go and letting it go. And then I'm like, dude, I gotta pull this fucking plant back. Like, my subconscious was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you
yeah.
can
I
grow.
want to smell a fucking full tent of it.
Yeah,
Like when But
when that smell
I'm
is
not
good.
dissing anything that people could chose whatever camp like you were saying, because I think at why I like it that much to do that sifting to get that plant you would like to clone and hold from it and do your clone from. It's because I've tasted the why of some of those clones. When you get those real thing and you start to play with anything and pollinate it 1 year whatever with one thing, another year with another thing, and you end up with 25 cross of each of your favorite clone that you've smoked weed from it, and then you go through that again and you're like, holy fuck, man, it's kind of hard sometimes to get that perfect one like I had. Oh,
Yeah,
I get
that,
it.
like, and I was just like, why didn't I just? Because it was in a pot. So of course, and guess what plant it is, right? It's Avon single plant. That's all it was. So it was from already an outlier that I liked enough to grow again because I pulled some plants that were growing in the ground in the spring when my wife, child, and I moved to the mountains in an apartment, and I wasn't growing anything, and it was all growing in Denver. My friend moved into my place. I came and saw him while he was moving into my place. The spring was coming on, and then I dug up plants from outside in Denver, brought them to the apartment 6 months after we were already there, basically, when my mother in law left, started growing plants there, grew some plants outside in the personal gardens, like the apartment gardens, took that plant, dug that up, put it in a pot, kept that inside all fucking winter. And then when the spring came, grew that plant outside and then fucking had those seeds, grew them in a pot in the spring, sprouted them outside, and then I was just like, holy shit. And then that plant got seeded up by a gangbang. And I was like, okay, I'll just grow some seeds. And then my brain was like, bro, after 6 years of doing this shit, you really think you're gonna get that fucking outlier smell again? Like, re-veg that fucking plant. So that was
You make it again at least. Yeah, double your take. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
So I
funny.
hope that fucking plant re-veges, and it looks like it's going to. I put it under a T5 with some LEDs, and it's out in my barn right now. So I mean, I really hope it does re-veg, but this is just a learning lesson. It's like, if you really have a plant that you really love, and out of the thousands of plants that you've grown, you have that one plant, that's a fucking keeper cut. Like
But you know what?
that's
My heart have went into place where I wasn't suspecting before I keep that plant a couple crop around. And I've realized that some of the strain I was trying without expecting much, I found a couple one into it that were like mating the rank, to keep around a couple of time. And then I did experimental cross, try those cross and still keep those. Then I was like, holy fuck, those plants are really pretty cut. And sometimes you're like, oh man, and some they have different effect from the same original population, but I can lean it toward two different things. And when you start to think in your stuff, you're like, oh, it's because those strains were not really matching together. They are too dominant from each other, and I can segregate it again and kind of still have influence from the cross that have been made, but have really dominance toward their ancestry, and that's where I was really happy to have like really strangely two different lines from that original pack. That was just one pack. I should have done into a lot more, but I've been able to be lucky and reassemble what was clicking good. What I found funny is that even if I interbreed those two together, I can sift it back from that population and lean it to where I want after. It's like I oh man, how do they call it? Is it a codominance? So they can be pairing on their own dominance, if I can say, or pair with the other dominants, and they will still segregate after those fucker. Some of those genetic are like that. They may mix into some part of the genetic, but some other are not, like they are there to be apart or looking 50-50. They are not integrating at 50-50 forever, if I can say, for most of the plant. So you really need to go and sift into those that will be 50-50 all the time and identify that. And now they can do it. But for a long time, there was no technology available for that. We knew we could do it, but it was just not the technology to identify it and lean it toward that. But all of those shit are not important for most of the grower, man. I've just seen a guy in the chat that was saying everyone want the wash of as of 10 years ago. I don't know if I understand the same way, but to me it's a bit like if I talk about the first few generation of White Widow that was sold, they were fucking gold. But if you were trying those plant outdoor here, they were crap. Some of the white Rhino, they were super fat flower, really nice thing, but they were molding on you most of the time. And I've seen some people having some clone of White Widow that were still growing well outdoor, were going a big yield. But I was finding it was more like that cardboard White Widow, and when they were growing it indoor, it was looking a lot better than their outdoor crop, if I can say on the quality, but it was not as huge flower, whatever. And I wasn't as impressed than some of the other line that other plant in the White Widow that was going well outdoor. So I started to think it's just maybe because some of the good trait I was after were into the more tropical side of that things. I don't know. A bit like the skunk for me, had a lot of good trade, but I've smoked most of my teens years. The commercial weed was all crossed with skunk at one point, and I went sick with it. It's not even an effect I go for. I just enjoyed some of the plant and the skunk that was to me a nice effect to enjoy, but not enough to fuck on it as much because it's in everything. So it's annoying. That's why when heard about the OG Kush or the Booba Kush or those things, I was like, oh, it's genetically quite different, or it at least look really different than what I got normally. Oh, let's try those shit. One of my friend had the LA Confidential. You've made me smoke it just when it came out, like it's the year after it won, and I was like, I like it. I don't know if it's gonna grow well here. And he told me, man, the reason why people don't grow it is because that plant, even if you grow it super well, you won't get the best harvest weight from it. And it's quite challenging to really get a nice crop all the time from that plant, besides other clones that are as good, if I can say so. He said, a lot of people were moving off of that thing. But if you had a joint of LA Confidential, people all wanted a couple puff of it because it would never grow it. So the same thing for the Jack Arrow back then. A lot of people did not want it to grow it, and I've heard a couple guys that were like, "Man, I will do a full fucking room of it, and I will be the guy having it, and I will sell it at like back then the expensive weed was 200. I've seen 250 an ounce, and like that's like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and people were paying it for longer flowering. One of my friends had it was a purple ace cross with the old timer ace, purple ace cross with the super silver ace and tie, I think, or something like that. And like the guy were like starting to develop that line, and he went to the cannabis cup, and they were giving some freebie to people, and he grown it back home. And he said on everyone that he heard that had those seeds, most of them did not grow anything before they see picture of his thing and start to think it may work to try, but it's really long. It's really there's a long internode. But he said, dude, I've full. He's put 1,000 watt in his bedroom in the middle of it and grew. He had like 20 seeds of it, and he said it was just looking like a fucking white jungle at the end. But he had enough long internode so that each of those buds were kind of having light from everywhere, and he ended up with quite good harvest, but it was really huge plant. So he wasn't growing it in a small tent trying to maintaining under 4 foot. If the plant would have finished, they were looking at 6 foot, but in fact they were bending because they would have been at 9, 10 feet tall, and his ceiling was at 9 feet, so he wasn't able to get, you know, the light more than a foot and a half from the first few tubs, and he just bended a couple tubs, and most of the plant were bending by the time they were gaining weight, and everyone was like, "Holy shit, man, that weed is not bad. It really doesn't get me stoned like the other stuff," and it had that kind of incense of the some of the A's that it was like, "Holy shit, man, that's what I think at," because the super silver A's, it's not really like the per A's as much. Like there's influence that in it, but a lot of people that loved the Super Silverace, well, that one was like the Sativa Extreme version cross of it. So it was to me, I was finding it more interesting for that. But man, everyone was like, "Holy shit, man! Nobody want to grow that thing," and he was the only one having it. He was offering people to get clone of his best of it, and most of the people were like, well, I don't want to put a full room of it and wait 3 months to let it flower. And he was like, well, those plants, you don't have to veg them. You veg them if you want to make a mother plant, whatever. But he said they don't go into full flower before a month, and even a month and a half before they really start to go into small, no, those small ball of hair, if I can say. Like the picture I got, if you would say like that one in the middle, it would have taken like early the second month it was start to look like that. But after that, it was building some of the like 1,000 small bud everywhere, all well formed. And the top of the plant was looking more strange than all the other bud, if I can say. The top was more like stretching in a weird way. But I found it true for like total tropical variety. Like 2/3 of the plant, it's look pretty well formed, and then you look at the top, and it's like a foot and a half long, and it finished into string of pearls that just go everywhere. But I was like, man, I don't care to have it. I don't give a fuck, cause the guy wasn't trimming it. But because he wasn't going heavy on feeding at the end, most of the leaf that were not frost were just falling. Like when you've cut the plant, he just had like kind of a old budlet with the frosty leaf going around, so it wasn't bad. So there's been that say see that we not moldy from moisture build up around the seed. Well, I understand. Like sometimes the seeds get bad, but it's more like if it's really humid for a while and it kind of kills some seeds inside, or sometimes you have like seeds that germ on the plant or stuff like that. But if the seeds is ready and have kind of dry enough, by the time the rest of the plant wanna mold, there's still a lot of seeds that are well preserved and there's no problem. It's kind of natural selection. It's meant to do that.
Yeah, I think No, it's great to have people grow some cultivars or some selections that take a very long time to flower. And if you're in a niche market and people really like the effect, they're going to pay or they're not going to get it. And like if you can hold out and you can help people understand, well, if you want dispensary, go to the dispensary. If you want craft, this is the price for craft. And like, if you want to go to IKEA and buy a desk that you can put together and take apart once before it turns into a piece of shit, go for it. If you want some Amish guy to do some woodwork for you and make you a hand-built desk, you're gonna pay. So
You know, there's a friend that he's selling seeds and stuff, and he's having some landrace now, a lot more than he was working on the breed that he had before, if I can say. He do some cross of his classic with the landrace, but he's focusing a lot more on reproducing some of the landrace and sifting what he like into it and to sell the seeds of those so that it can be preserved of some of those fonder things that you will no longer be able to find. So that's one of the reasons also why he was breeding those classic back then. It's because he wanted to preserve it. So some people will say, "Oh man, he's copying variety." No, he's not copying it. He's just trying to keep what he liked from it and preserve it. And we need those guys to do that. You don't copy the breeder. If you keep it the line, maybe the breeder have focused on hybrid of those line and this and that, and the the mood of the market change. So don't worry about that. There are some people on chasing gold all the time and the next wave of hype, but your good founding stuff, your classic, you need to preserve it because the people that are there for money, they are not doing it. I'm just
no,
telling you,
yeah,
like they're
those are
not
the people
there.
that
They don't have even time. They wish they could. A lot of them wish they could do that, but they don't have time for that. They have so much to chase the hype and to go ahead of the curve and you know, if you get really something that wash well to get now, you're gonna be able to sell those seeds, but you need to sell the feminized version of it.
well, the thing that gets me sometimes is where people say that the plant is a good washer, and that's all well and good, but then they sell the seeds of a good washer, but then they tell you what the clone only washes at. And I'm like, okay, that's cool to look forward to that, maybe, but with all the alleles and all the greatness, like, okay, so what? It's a 5% washer or it's a 6% washer. Well, that's great. That cut is a 6% washer. What happens when I get a 10 pack and the five seeds that I pop, is it really going to be better
No,
than 6%? Or is it going to be a 3%? Or is it going to be because some people really bank on the fact
yeah.
of their one plant, and now that they've made seeds of it, and they might have even made a cross of it, like there still has to be some sifting going on, almost a few years worth of work to,
And if you
to figure
really
it out.
want those super hard nog, really packed super densely, you don't have those best washer. I'm just telling you that.
So I mean,
You
I
won't.
guess I
You
don't
it
really
just
get
like
the.
you want the kind of chunkiness, but still like I've seen a couple people whining about when you do those kind of dreads like just calyx at the end, like those foxtailing, but just calyx mostly. When you got buds that are just form of it, they still do pretty well, even if they are kind of tightly packed. They kind of the trichome get out more easily than those that are more round and all smaller calyx together. So the really quick flowering strain were not as good because they were like small clump of small calyx all together. Sometimes they were pretty good, the dry sieve, but they were not washing well, and you had to crush all the flour to get into, and that's when you introduce some contaminant. So people start to have like a another view of how they should select the structure of the flower than a couple of years before that were really going about after those clump or those really long dense flower or like the big bud that was like a bit more loose but pretty huge and lumpy, if I can say. I don't know. Like I was finding it that a lot of those stuff were sometimes looking really nice on the plant, but as soon as you start to deconstruct what now we would consider the best washer, you were finding like just barrel of calyx and frosty small leaf into it. Like you're gonna pass hours and hours retrimming the same flower and being like, no, there's nothing left. I see through. Well, those things wash well.
Yeah. No, I have a couple of lanky males that I once again, like the labels got pulled off by my chickens because I was labeling. I was trying to do my best, and I thought things would go a little smoother with not having individuals being able to like pull my labels off, and then all of a sudden my chickens pull them off. But like this male, it's super lanky and it barely has the pollen sacs next to each other. So I'm re-vegging that to see if those traits come through just because people appreciate washers. I've
Yeah,
never
you may
wa-
have like smaller individual flower, but yeah, you don't know what the male gonna man. I've seen that it's quite strange. Okay, I've seen some trait in some male before that through the grow that by the end I would have not said that of the male if I can say I don't. But if when I started seeds of those male, I've seen some of those trait back and I've been able to identify that, man, that male, what he was showing me, it wasn't like that huge clump of flower, but it's all those flower that stack super nice. They were
yeah,
just not super big and like a big clump of it, like super huge at the end. Let's say they were just stacking super well around, along the branch, and they were not as huge. But I don't think it was just the male. I think it was also the female that was stacking well. I guess that I've made it with, but they were the same breed. So I could have went into one that was more clumpy and more big and chunky. No, that one was just perfect branching and stacking well. And I'd rather get long branch with well stacked stuff on it than having a super long, big flower, or I don't know how to explain it. But uh, uh, at one point, I was finding that people were too stuck into their ideal plant. You need to kind of open your mind to it and see what it bring good from that, and sometimes you end up saying, "Oh, well, I'd rather just get the finished produce of that plant, but I think it grew like shit."
yeah, I'm learning, dude. Like as I've gone through the motions with these plants, the ones that don't have the good structure and they're kind of like lanky and wiry and the flower is small, those are the ones that smell fucking amazing.
You see? Yeah. So you don't want to judge too quick before you.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, I get it. There's plants that grow up like a beast, and it could be a plant that is just you stick a seed in the ground and it grows up and it's 8 feet, 9 feet tall. I gave some seeds to one of my friends that works here, and she said her plants are at least 10 feet tall. And I was just, I'm super stoked about that, but I'm just like, a plant that big, I wonder if it's a good washer or not. Like maybe it's the lanky ones that you got to put up with like falling over and snapping in half almost unless you put them into a trellis.
hmm
Those are the ones that are really going to be the ones that hit hard, like the ones that challenge you as a grower. Those are going to be the ones that fuck you up the most.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I found with some of those stuff is you need to open your mind to a whole different aspect and maybe your first goal was when you start to really sift into like, okay, what I'm doing with it. You know, it's a different situation than some of the buyer that go toward a company and say, "Oh, okay, what's the thing that tastes like strawberry and grow in a way that I will be able to impress people showing my grow." Well, it's not necessarily the stuff I was gonna smoke with you. So, like to me, it doesn't matter at all what your fucking grow look like. I've had really shitty grow sometime, and I can tell you, all my friends that have smoked joint with me were fucking happy of it, and they were wishing that that grow would have been better, because they were like, man, if it's been shitty like that and it's that good, dude, we want it. So yeah, man, making ash it's another things that I found to me it's where to go now because people are not into flower that yeah after 6 months most of the time they're not that good. And what I've smoked with a couple guy that they buy in the legal shop, they were like having pretty more fresh flower than it was just after the legalization, but it's just it's a hit and miss, you know. Some batch are just crap, man. And it's the same fucking shit that they had the last time, and they were like just having that bad batch of it. So, and sometimes it's that batch stay on the shelf for a fucking while, and they buy it back. It's the same thing. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's only been a few plants where like I've smoked it and I've like fucking hallucinated and had like this total mind fuck paranoia, and it was from like a complete stranger that lit me up that day, so I had no idea. And I would love to have that high again. I haven't really been that high, but then I'm like, I wonder what they sprayed on it. Like, could it have been the
A
chemicals
little
of,
dose of Eagle 20.
yeah, right.
but man, have you seen that when you fertilize a plant strongly at one point, like a tiny bit too much at one point, but even if the rest of the time is all good, it's kind of stay fucked up because of it. And I've seen it a lot more with people that boost the maximum of it, and they were like playing with Calmag at the beginning, and then a lot of flower booster, and I'm like, dude, even if you let the plant eat it after, the few time that you boost it like too strongly, it just in it. Like the plant kind of not process everything into goodness, like some of the other guy that would have still used chemical stuff, but it's like just not as heavy all the time, and they don't go overboard a couple time. You know, that's the thing I've noticed. A guy was saying if you fertilize more regularly, pretty much always the same thing, your plant response will be better and it could achieve a better result than trying to boost it a couple times. And it kind of, I don't remember how he was explaining it exactly, but I was like, oh, it may be the answer of that taste that was staying. Because to me, general hydroponic, it smell. When I
Yeah,
open a bag that have a month or two, I
you
smell it.
know, hydroponics. It was just called sweet,
No, no,
and
no,
it's
not the sugar, just the first the
no,
three
I know what
part
you're
was I
talking
was
about.
like, I don't see it's a bad fertilizer. I was just feeling that if you go a bit too much, it just smell it, and if you go in Pro Mix that there's nothing else but that, well, it's what your plant is made of.
Well, yeah, that's like people have talked about how they could tell individuals used bat guano or they
I
used
don't know for bad guano, but I just seen it for people that
different
use too much salt that was showing that.
yeah, it's just I want my plants. I want to have a minimum amount of things in the soil. I haven't amended the soil in a while. The some of the best grows that I had, I like the plant came out looking like fucking a High Times magazine. That's when I was using salts, you know. And then when I grew professionally, the plants looked fucking amazing. But then when I when I smoked Gorilla Glue from my friend's organic Jadam, garden, he was using like natural remedies instead of salts and shit. I was like, what the fuck is that lime flavor I'm tasting? He's like, yeah, that's organic, bro. And I was like, holy shit, that tastes fucking delicious, dude. And then I'm like, dude, I'm fucking high. Like, what cut was that? He's like, that's a cut from work. And I'm like, bro, it's a totally different effect than works weed. And he's like, yeah, dude, that's what you get when you get organic weed. And I was like, no fucking way. So that was like my first introduction to understanding like just because it looks pretty and it grows well and it yields like a motherfucker. And when you take pictures of it, everybody's giving you fire emojis. That doesn't mean it's the best weed. It just means it's the most attractive weed.
Yeah,
So it's like,
it's expressed. So yeah, I would say as long that you've not tried that clone in different condition like that, you don't know yet. And one of the reason why I was loving some of the guy that had long flowering plant is because they were swearing more by organic fertilizer, because the plant wasn't needed as much strong all the time. And as if their soil was well built, the plant had pretty much everything. He just had to kind of supplement a bit, like before flowering and beginning of the stretch, I would say. And after that, he had nothing to do. He was saying like, I think I've feed it 3 times in middle of life of the plant and I've let it go. Like it wasn't like really feeding the plant, it was just like replenishing the soil from nitrogen mostly, because everything was there. So everyone that wonder like, oh, that clone of whatever fucking variety they can get, well, try it organic and see if it still grow as amazing, healthy, whatever than it was, and you'll see the taste and will be different. And to me, what you just described it was like, when terpene get you high, that you
yeah,
won't get the same exactly high when it
yeah,
smell a tiny bit different from the same clone. So it
yeah.
kind of change a bit.
It's beautiful to be able to like grow it. I mean, like I would love to have friends that live closer that grew the same cut with me, and we could all like see every once in a while hanging out and smoking the same fucking weed, who grew it, where the group agrees the way that they grew it, we're going to do that recipe. All of us are going to do that recipe the same.
Yeah, because we know that's the way we like that one. Maybe not the best yield, but it's the way we want to smoke it. But to wrap it for what we were saying last week is your clone you to try in different method, different environment. It's a genetic plasticity, but it's the same clone. But
I've been
when
walking
you
to a
grow
cigar.
a generation and generation like you do, you get genetic variation. It's two
Yeah.
different things.
I mean, like I used to smoke cigars and cigarettes and pipe tobacco, and like I noticed that if I smoked like a Davidoff or an Ashton, I would like those cigars. And then I learned that certain cigars rolled a certain way. They would only allow the person that rolls cigars, they had to be rolling cigars for 5 years or 7 years before they could roll that shape. And that was rolled by the people that didn't have primitive methodologies. They were actually honed in their craft. And then I learned those smoked the best. I really like those. But then I also learned like the tobacco inside was one thing, but then the Connecticut wrapper is what I really, really liked. And like, so when you're growing plants and you learn the subtle nuances, you can grow it 100% the way you like it and it gets you high. And then you keep on doing it that way. And then you meet a friend that totally blows you out of the water and you're like, how the fuck did you grow it any better? And then they tell you, hey man, I use labs. I I I spray it at this time of the day. I I actually talk to my plants. I put the seeds in my mouth before I plant them, and then you're like, oh. So like I just wish I had friends that were a little fucking closer so that I could start getting all geeked out with because I've just been banging plants and making seeds and happy with the high I have and not complaining about it. But I want to start getting into a fucking group of friends that are willing to share flower so that we can all get better and grow with a recipe that makes the effect better, not I don't know. Guess I'm
Yeah,
ranting.
no, I think you got a nice goal there. So if there's people that find it appealing, I guess everything that you've mixed into it, if you can sift into that and have a little help of some people to lean it toward what will be more keeper for everyone, and that methodology that make it express better also, because I've seen a breeding program years before that have been done into more northern latitude, and they were sending stuff into people like California and those latitudes, way different climate, and everything that was going well toward both of them were getting keep. But the project have not been done more than 2 years, I think. So a lot of people have abandoned or whatever. I don't remember whatever happened, but I was following that project and I was finding it interesting because the second year everyone had interchange seeds of the best like that, and they did not try the flower, but they were able to see picture and description of how it is, and it was making the line advance a lot quicker, I guess, doing it. It doesn't mean that your variety will be super bulletproof in all the climate, but their goal was to get something early. And in California, the plant for the size were fucking monster bud into it. Like that was crazy. Over here, they were looking like normal plant, just flowering early. And when the guy was like, "Man, the breed that you've got in there, it's not the strongest, but the effect and the taste is crazy." So he said, "I really enjoy to have plant that just grew by themselves, short and chunky and early in the season, but he wasn't able to keep clone of it." Because they were like kind of always pre-flower when he was keeping clone with a small light over, like what people do in the south of Cali. And he was like, man, I should maybe try to keep it inside 24 hours of light till it go back into full veg mode. But the plant was always kind of wanted to flower as soon that there's not as much light or less hours of light, a tiny bit or tiny pots. It was flowering earlier. It was like a breed that was not like as noob friendly than something else, but that was perfect for northern climate. So, and what the guy in Kelly was saying the first year was that he had to sift through a couple arm, but the people up north had no arm into. So it helped you to sift into different things that you were not seeing at first. So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it for tonight. We're a
I'm
bit
sorry,
late
guys.
into
I'm too
that.
tired. Yeah,
Oh, dude, you're good. I'm
yeah, I'm
fucking owed
exhausted.
guys. Yeah. Wrap it up like a gift, baby.
All right.
Yeah, have a good night, guys.
Take care, everyone.